I think that people are missing something by sitting at their desks all the time or sitting in their cars all the time. We are used to doing and making.
I'm David Moscow. You might know me as a child actor, but it's not my whole story.
Now, you might know him from his roles in Big and Newsies, but he's also been diving deep into the world of food, travel, and sustainability with his series From Scratch.
There is something transformational about feeding yourself with your own hands, and people need to do it.
It really is a fascinating concept for a show. The foraging, the hunting, the cooking, very different than just I'm traveling and eating whatever I find on the way. This is deeper.
To stand in a place where people have been harvesting and gathering food and growing food, in this case, for tens of thousands of years, it just showed the connection, really a moving moment.
One thing that had me laughing a little bit at your expense was the fishing, because it seems like the trout has been a challenge.
That's brutal. International trade has formed a lot of the meals that we eat. If you eat a slice of pizza, that's 68 people who made that pizza. If you eat food, you're always tied to your community. I think food unifies people. If you go back to making food from scratch, there is a meaning there, and it's a beautiful thing. It resonates, and the meal tastes better.
Now, you might know him from his roles in Big and Newsies, but he's also been diving deep into the world of food, travel, and sustainability with his series From Scratch. We're going to talk about this journey, his work, and maybe even some behind-the-scenes stories. David, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me, Angie. I'm very excited.
Before we go traveling, let's talk about probably what everybody asks you. You starred in Big. Wow. You were the young version of Tom Hanks's character in Big. So if you were going to go back in time and tell young David that he would be traveling the world and have a show talking about sustainable food and cuisine and sourcing produce, like, how do you think he would respond to that?
He'd be bewildered. But I will say that my years of acting kind of led to this, in a sense that I never really had time off to travel because I was always waiting for auditions. So while all my friends were going away for, that summer trip through Europe, backpacking, I never really got to do this. I think I pent it up after all those years and figured out a way to make a living from it. So here we are.
Let's talk about your show From Scratch. You have now been doing this for 5 seasons.
We're almost at the end of season 5.
It really is a fascinating concept for a show. But how did you get into it? The foraging, the hunting, the cooking, those things are very different than just I'm traveling and eating whatever I find on the way. This is deeper.
My mom's side of the family are from Utah and Montana, and really sort of working class. My grandpa was the kind of guy that if his car broke down, he could pull over the side of the road, pop the hood, and fix it, right? That's very far away from me, this actor from New York. And all my cousins are the kind of guys that, fall comes around, they go out and they get a deer and they bring it back and they break it down. They send it out to everybody in the family, has something in their freezer for the winter. And I always looked at that and was like, to be able to take care of yourself and your loved ones like that is really neat. Something I did not know how to do. We really started working on this about 8 years ago, and I felt like there was like a lot of division. And I think food unifies people. And so I wanted to just do a documentary about how a taco and a margarita were made, and go down and check out the experts, subsistence farmers who are harvesting masa and the humidors who are harvesting agave and taking that all the way through to the making of tequila. And I just thought that the hard work would be undeniable and connecting people, through that. And so it was just going to be a standalone doc. And my agent at the time, he was like, so what's going to happen with that doc? Maybe it goes to Sundance. Maybe it gets bought by HBO. Maybe 5,000 people see it. But if that's the first episode and you're going around looking at food cultures with each episode, now that's a TV series. And I was like, and that's a good idea.
So how many episodes have you shot so far?
We're on 49 and a half. We're doing it's really neat. We're doing a New York bagel episode. And it's sort of touching upon how food is international now. So we harvested wheat in British Columbia. We're making Nova lox in Nova Scotia. I got poppy seeds from Poland. And actually, that's the birthplace of the bagel. So we talk about the bagel there. Cream cheese in upstate New York. You get to see how international trade has formed a lot of the meals that we eat.
Let's talk about some of your episodes that you've already shot. Utah. I just finished watching Utah, and you spent time there when you were a kid, right?
Yeah. My mom's side, I have like a billion cousins, and my mom would drop me off there for a couple weeks in the summer.
What was it like when you went back to film?
Well, when I was in Salt Lake, it was a town. I remember my grandpa lived in Sandy. You got up in the morning, you smelled cattle, and that does not exist. It's subdivisions, it's 7-Elevens. There's a Silicon Valley there now. So in a way, part of the episode, we were looking for this Salt Lake that I used to know. And we came upon it. There was this guy who's had a farm there. He and his brothers have had a farm, and the family farm, for like 4 generations. And he was 85 years old, still farming. We got apples from him. And I remember he drove me around on his ATV. We got peppers from him. And it felt like a snapshot of the past. One of the dishes that we had, which I didn't even know existed, is there is a native potato to the United States. And it is definitively the oldest potato in the world. This was in Escalante Valley in southwest Utah. And the reason why it was important was because potatoes were endemic further south, like New Mexico and Arizona and the border of Mexico. But the fact that people would be bringing them up here meant that they were domesticated. Wild potatoes have tannins in them, which make them not very tasty unless you do something to them or genetically evolve them like we did. But true wild potatoes don't taste great. So you have to cook them in clay. The clay sucks out the tannins, and then the potato is tastier. The Native Americans were doing the same thing, except they would, the rule is you cook it in a clay pot. So we were driving down the road in Hennifer by the side of the highway, and we looked over and we saw clay on the hillside. So I jumped out, grabbed my shovel, got some clay, put it in a bag, went to a local potter, and he helped me turn that into the pot. In actuality, it was too much story for that episode, so we did not include, my pot making in it. But really, this amazing, like, to stand in a place where people have been harvesting and gathering food and growing food, in this case, for tens of thousands of years. Really a moving moment. And then I turned that into trout piscador with roasted 4-corner potatoes. And if anybody's traveling through Salt Lake City, they can try and go up to the U, and they're growing 4-corner potatoes there that you can buy a sack from. Or you can reach out to the Diné Bakea, the Spanish called the Navajo, and you can buy bags of these. If you've never had them, I highly recommend them. It was another thing that we learned on that episode, because we made an acorn pancake that went with the trout. And this was something I didn't know, but if you took all the foods that humanity ate over time, over the history of humanity, and you put them on a table, acorns would be the biggest pile. That has sustained more humans than any other plant.
I have an oak tree, so I might have to smash some acorns into tonight's dinner. Like, why not?
You're going to need to soak them. You're going to need to soak them for a while, because there's a lot of tannins and they taste pretty nasty. You can find it on YouTube or something. There'll be somebody showing you how to detanninize an acorn so you can turn it into flour.
I am the person that would do that. Let's turn our attention a little bit to the Pacific Northwest. You did an episode in Seattle for the 2nd season. What was special about that environment?
So I went up there, and we were initially going to do salmon. But there's a group, a pod of orcas that eats salmon. And people were worried that if you fish too much salmon, that you're going to hurt the orca pod. So locals there are actually importing salmon from Alaska. I was like, well, I can't go to Alaska. Why don't we switch this to crab? So then I went out for Dungeness crab, and there was crab right outside of my hotel. Like, you're not allowed to eat that crab. But there are a lot of crabbing tour companies that you can go out with. So that's what we did. We went out, they got the winch, they send down the cage, you pull it up, they give you gloves. They don't tell you that these gloves don't protect you against getting snapped by the crabs.
Oh
So,
no.
so I'm talking to him. I'm like, oh, so these gloves protect you? He's like, no. And the crab went, kite. And I went, ah. And then the producers were like, this is incredible. That's great. Anything
You're
that
like bleeding everywhere.
good TV. In another episode, we went to Portland and we were going for the matsutake, which is possibly the most expensive mushroom in the world. Matsutake in Japanese and Chinese culture has become a symbol. It's become something you give as a gift. There are no more matsutakes in China. There are no more matsutakes in Japan. They've been wiped out because of the value. So now you can find them in the Pacific Northwest and you can find them in Finland. So if you want to go and have an incredible mushroom hunt, now you have to go with an expert if you don't know what you're doing with mushrooms because, you could die. We went with Irie Mushroom Farms. And you can go into Portland and take a tour. He'll take you out and you'll find chanterelles. And if you're lucky, you'll find matsutake. And oh my gosh, it smells like cinnamon. And it loves volcanic ash. So you head out of Portland, you go north towards Mount St. Helens. And one of the reasons it's rare and expensive is because moss and roots will grow over it. So you actually have to go underneath and lift it up. And under there are these huge, beautiful smelling mushrooms. And then when you pull them out, there's like on their stem is ash that goes down from the Mount St. Helens eruption.
So one thing that had me laughing a little bit at your expense was the fishing, because fishing, especially fly fishing, is so hard and unpredictable, and it can be really cold. So you do a lot of fishing for the show. What has been a good experience for you, and what has made you think, we're not catching that fish anymore? Like pick me a different kind of fish next time, because it seems like the trout has been a challenge.
That's brutal. Well, fly fishing is something that you grow to be good at. And while I'm doing it on the show, like I do it like, I don't know, once a year, once every 2 years. And then they expect you to sort of be successful at it. But I will say, knock on wood, here's some wood. I have been more and more successful with fly fishing. So the first, you saw Utah. And then in the recent season, we did Denver. We went to a really cool trout farm called Trout Haven. I went with my son. He had never fished before. And I got one and he got one. And then he had to learn how to like gut and fillet it. That's a special memory I have with my grandfather. He was the first person to take me fishing. And I remember we got in a big disagreement about me having to gut the fish. But that was his rule. If you caught the fish, you have to gut it. And so my son did that with me. And then we ate the fish that he caught. And it's a beautiful trout farm on a really cool lake. They have a hotel you can stay at right there. They just put an extra little price on the fish you catch. It's like the cost that you would get a fish at a supermarket, except you've just spent, 2 hours of your life in one of the most beautiful locations fishing for your dinner. So that was wonderful.
Denver is often thought of as like steak and potatoes, right? But you kind of proved that that's not the case.
When we arrived, our hotel was like down the street from a little Denver Arts District, and there are a bunch of restaurants there. And we just went for a walk. We didn't look up anything, and we stopped at a Chinese restaurant, a Szechuanese spot, and had a meal that could do battle with any meal in Los Angeles. It was, and I think the restaurant's in the Michelin Guide. I don't think it has a Michelin star because it's not a fancy place, but it was phenomenal. And there was one funny bit where my son, he eats a lot of different foods now because he's on the show. And the waiter came over and was like, yeah, this meal is hot. This dish is hot that you're ordering. And my son goes, I like hot. And he got taught a lesson. As people walked in the front door, they saw my son like snot coming out his nose, crying at the table as he's eating this like Szechuan numbing chicken dish. And then Rioja, who that was the restaurant that we were at. That's, I think, the one that kind of changed things around. People really recognized it as, you know, a travel destination, a food destination. And it won a James Beard. And it really is sort of like the granddaddy of Denver restaurants, you know, sort of this new gastronomy, and not too pretentious too. So that's the thing about Denver as well. Like, the restaurant is kind of like really open armed. You come in, you have a meal done in a very thoughtful, special way. I want to go back there right now.
Denver's a big city. So what misconceptions do people have about foraging in that kind of environment?
Within Denver itself, there are farms. You're driving through the suburban neighborhood of Denver and you come upon Eckhart Community Farm, which is like this farm that gives produce to nonprofits, to food pantries, right? In Denver, and then just outside, like all day trips, like Boulder Valley kind of thing. We went to a really neat, the Masa Seed Farm, which supplies a lot of the seeds to farmers around. And I mean, some really, really unique vegetables and fruits. We went there for Jimmy Nardello peppers and some corn because we were making a corn pudding, like a polenta thing at Rioja. What was neat about that is I had never been to a seed farm before. And the farm was overflowing with ripe and overripe fruit and vegetables. And the reason is because they're not picking for consumption. They're growing for the seeds. So you walk into this farm, you're like, oh my gosh, everybody needs to like harvest this. It's too late. And he's like, no, we're going to take all these tomatoes, we're going to pulp them up, we're going to sieve them, and you're going to get these seeds out, and then we're going to sell these seeds. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'd never seen that before.
What would you say is the most challenging ingredient that you have fished, hunted, or foraged for in all your episodes?
This is easy. So octopus, I was in Sardinia, and I went out and we were spearfishing for octopus. It was really murky. There had been rain. There was runoff. Couldn't really see. I caught one little baby octopus, and it was like so tiny and cute on my hand that I didn't have the heart to kill it. I was like, oh, this. So I let it go. And then I went out to spearfish for octopus again in Malta. Didn't get anything. Murky. It's octopus. I don't know. The octopus god does not want me to get octopus on this show. How are there so many octopus on menus? Like, I just don't get it.
I don't know.
Where are they
Maybe
coming
it's not
from?
really octopus. Maybe it's something else.
Right.
You know, it's like stingray or I don't know, something much more common. Do you think people should be intimidated about finding local ingredients and foraging, or is it really just case by case?
I think you should always go with an expert, whether it's mushrooming or you're on a farm with someone who's going to help you. But there is something transformational about feeding yourself with your own hands, and people need to do it. Whether it's my son catching his first fish or picking apples, picking pumpkins around Halloween, these are things that will stay with him forever, that he knows he can feed himself and has the confidence to do this, right? I think that people are missing something by sitting at their desks all the time or sitting in their cars all the time. We are used to doing and making. Like, that is what our history, our ancestry is for. We have these hands to carry things, right? Like, and people wonder what they're doing with their lives. And in many ways, if you go back to making food from scratch, there is a meaning there. And it's a beautiful thing. It's like, it resonates. And the meal tastes better.
So do you feel like doing this show has changed your perspective on food in general, in the US, in the world, on sourcing it?
You do realize how sort of how tied we are together. You know, a lot of times people think I did this on my own. I'm a self-made person. But if you eat a slice of pizza That's 68 people who made that pizza, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you eat food, you're always tied to your community. That's one. Two, I think that you bump up against the planet, the natural world, and you realize some of the trouble that we're in or that are coming our way. Farmers and fisher folk are at the front lines of climate issues. The natural world is having problems because of overconsumption by humans, or our meddling at least. It's like an onion. When you start peeling things back and you start getting like, it's very easy to become sort of like an activist, because you're just sitting there with a farmer and they're like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep this farm going much longer. And you're sitting there, well, then who's going to feed us?
Yeah.
Right?
And what am I going to eat? Mm-hmm.
Can't eat stocks. And a lot of these guys, these women and men are retiring. They're aging out. A lot of our farmers are aging out, and because we are not supporting them in the ways that they need to be supported, it's not a job that particularly young people want to move into, right? We are our community, and we need to stick together, and we need to help the people in this community. And this is the case with food. You cannot turn the other cheek. You cannot close your eyes. You cannot stick your head in the sand, because it will affect all of us at some point.
David Moscow, thank you for joining us. And thank you to our listeners for being with us. If you're planning a trip, be sure to connect with a AAA travel advisor. Check out AAA.com/travel or visit your local branch. This podcast is a production of Auto Club Enterprises. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and leave us a review. I'm Angie Orth. Thank you for traveling with AAA.